power has a way of narrowing doors, turning conversations into official statements, and making affection seem like a rumor whispered through palace halls. But the old stories of royal couples remind us that love can slip through the cracks where politics pretend to be the only map. Tonight, we'll wander through a few quiet, incandescent moments when two hearts found each other even as the world counted votes and drew lines on maps. We'll see how courage, curiosity, and a stubborn belief in ordinary warmth can outshine grand plans and public verdicts. In the story of Victoria and Albert, the tabloids hadn't been invented yet, but the headlines were everyone's duty and every gaze was on the future. Victoria, a young princess who would become queen, and Albert, a cousin with a keen mind and a stubborn love for order, met not in a ballroom of bright eyes but in corridors where plans were sketched and futures drafted. They showed up with different kinds of fire. She carried a quiet resolve to be useful. He carried a fierce belief in partnership. It began as a partnership of minds, calendars, reforms, the careful craft of a nation's etiquette, yet as letters warmed with shared confidences, the warmth grew into something private and reckless in the best way. They learned to speak the same language, not by changing who they were, but by listening more deeply to who the other could become when kindness was the law of the house. Their love didn't erase the chariot wheels of empire from the floor, but it did slow them enough to give beauty a chance to bloom between drafts and debates. Grace Kelly's fairy tale entrance into monarchy is remembered as a leap across a grand, glossy divide in a life that was all cameras and applause. She met Prince Rainier III with a human shimmer and openness to risk that surprised a throne that prefers calculation. Politics had its rituals, its duties, its public smiles that never quite touched the heart. Yet in the quiet moments, Grace saw a man who chose warmth over spectacle. A future husband who made room for her voice in a court used to speaking in protocol. They learned to blend two very different worlds, Hollywood light and the marble hush of a principality. Their romance wasn't a reckless escape. It was a careful map drawn with patient questions and brave answers. In a palace ballroom or on a sunlit terrace, their glances carried a simple promise. Love could be a sanctuary built not on fantasy, but on trust. When they stood together, the politics that kept others at arm's length dissolved into something gentler and understanding that two people can honor duty by choosing each other every day. Elizabeth II and Philip, the long devotion in the eye of a storm, remind us that love can become a compass when the world grows loud with opinions. They met as young people who believed in the idea that life could be a shared project rather than a series of separate adventures. World events pressed in war, succession, public scrutiny, but their bond became a quiet rebellion against fear. They discovered a rhythm in the everyday. The way a hand found a hand across a kitchen table. The way a whispered joke slipped through a crowded room. The way a routine morning could become a pledge that no scandal or rumor could unravel. The romance here wasn't about fireworks, it was about staying, choosing again and again. Building a home where the outside noise couldn't touch the inside warmth. Their devotion offered a model for any couple who has ever wondered if love can endure when the headlines demand attention more than the heart's whisper. From the pages of ancient intrigues and political storms, Cleopatra and Antony taught a different kind of lesson: how desire, sharpened by strategy, can still burn with sincerity. The Nile glowed under a sky where imperial ambitions thundered. Yet their alliance grew not from mere seduction but from a danger. They learned to read each other's politics as if they were poems, knowing when to bend, when to press forward, and when to retreat for the sake of the other. Love here looked like a negotiation where the prize wasn't dominance but mutual awakening. The city's limelight could not shape their tenderness. Their tenderness reshaped the city around them. Even as history remembers its battles more clearly than its courtship. It's a reminder that sometimes romantic resilience means choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. And choosing truth over triumph even when truth threatens to expose the heart. And then there is the painful, luminous case of Wallace Simpson and Edward VIII, a love story that collided with constitutional duty in a way that reshaped a century. The world saw them under a bright glare of judgment. Yet the couple faced a decision that felt almost sacramental: to claim happiness while the throne asked for sacrifice. Some stories end here, in a palace balcony that echoes regrets. This one, though, invites a gentler question. How do two people in love navigate a system that doesn't always grant permission for desire? They answered with restraint and courage, with a willingness to redefine the path, even if the path carried cost. In their choice to step back from the throne, they offered a quiet testament that love can be a fearless act, even when the stage is unkind. The lesson isn't that every romance survives public reckoning, but that every romance that survives teaches us how to hold hope with both hands, even when the world presses in. Across these stories runs a shared thread. Love persisted not because it ignored politics, but because it learned to coexist with it. The couples refused to surrender their humanity to the machinery of power. They found ways to nurture affection in the margins, the letters tucked into drawers, the secret confidences whispered after a crowd cleared, the small rituals of daily life that remind two people they are still choosing each other. They turned public scrutiny into a mirror for growth, asking themselves what love asks of them when they are seen by millions and judged by tens of thousands. And along the way, they offered a hopeful blueprint for us all, that even in the hardest seasons, romance can become a steady flame, a lighthouse for anyone who also carries a heavy crown or a heavy heart. So why do royal couples fall in love despite politics? Because love has a stubborn courage. It walks in when strategists begin to murmur about margins and outcomes. It lingers when committees debate the next treaty and whether a kiss will complicate the next public address. It respects tradition, and it carves out space for growth. It forgives, it revises, it forgives again. It teaches us that happiness isn't a shortcut around responsibility, but a shared discipline that makes every duty feel lighter when it's shouldered together. The royal stories stay with us because they remind us that romance isn't a fantasy of perfect timing or flawless fortune. It's a practice made up of listening, choosing, and staying. It's the quiet, luminous stance that love can take when the world is loud, when plans are official, and when two people decide to keep walking forward, hand in hand, toward a future they will build with patience, humor, and faith in each other. As you carry these tales through your own days, let their tenderness stroll with you. Let the idea settle that your own heart can find a way to say yes, even when the room is crowded with expectations. Let us hold on to the belief that love can bloom between meetings and ballots, between crisis and relief, between headlines and the hush of a private promise kept. If a royal couple can discover a lasting warmth amid centuries of pressure, perhaps we too can discover a kinder, quieter happiness in our ordinary lives, the kind that grows when we keep choosing the person beside us, again and again. And that, dear listener, is the heart of why royal couples fell in love despite politics. Not because politics refused to matter, but because love learned to outlast it, to outshine it, and to turn public duty into a shared, imperfect, glorious life. With every drawn curtain and every quiet confession, they remind us that love grows best where politics pauses to listen. So let us borrow that patience for our own stories, to show mercy in a quarrel, to listen longer, and to choose kindness again. When two people decide to persist, the room around them grows lighter, the noise softens, and a hopeful future feels possible, even on days colored by doubt that pass. Let these royal whispers travel through your evening, turning doubt into a doorway. If love can survive a crown-esque glare, it can endure a quiet disagreement and a hopeful compromise. Hold on to that.